You've seen them everywhere, right? Stapled to telephone poles, stuck in the grass at busy intersections, those handwritten "We buy houses" signs. Ever wonder what's really going on behind that simple and, let's be honest, sometimes desperate-looking promise? Okay, let's dive into this fascinating and often controversial corner of the real estate world.
So in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the business model that powers these signs. It's called real estate wholesaling, and it's a world of motivated sellers, cash buyers, and a hustle that's currently going through a massive, legally enforced transformation.
Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at who these companies are targeting. Then, we'll get into exactly how a wholesale deal works. After that, we'll dig into the controversy that sparked a major crackdown, cover the new rules of the game, and see what it all means for the future.
At its core, wholesaling is really designed to solve a very specific problem. You can think of it as a bridge between two very different types of people in the property market.
On one side, you have what the industry calls motivated sellers. Now, these are homeowners who often need speed and convenience way more than they need the absolute top dollar for their property. Maybe they're facing foreclosure, or they're just a tired landlord wanting out. Maybe they inherited a house they can't manage. The key is they want a fast, as-is cash sale without the hassle of repairs, showings, and realtor commissions.
So how does a wholesaler connect these motivated sellers with a buyer and, make a profit in the middle? Let's break down the original playbook.
Wholesaling in its purest form is really all about contract flipping. A wholesaler puts a property under contract with the seller, but, and this is the key part, instead of buying it themselves, they sell their rights in that contract to an end buyer, who's typically a real estate investor.
The process looks pretty simple, breaking down into just 4 steps. First, find a motivated seller with a property that needs some work. Second, negotiate a below-market price and get it under contract. Then, you find a cash buyer, usually a flipper. And finally, you assign your contract to that buyer for a fee.
And that fee, that's where the profit comes from. So for example, a wholesaler gets a house under contract for, say, $165,000. They have a network of cash buyers and they find one who's willing to pay $175,000 for that deal. At closing, the title company pays the seller their $165K and the wholesaler gets the $10,000 difference as their assignment fee. They never own the house, never fix a single leaky faucet. They just control the paper for a little while.
And this brings us to the absolute key legal distinction. A wholesaler isn't technically selling real estate. That would require a license. No, instead, they're selling their equitable interest in a purchase contract. And this is the loophole that has allowed this whole industry to operate in a legal gray area for so long.
But that gray area has caused some major problems. The simplicity of the model, combined with a total lack of oversight, created an environment that was just ripe for controversy and, eventually, a major regulatory crackdown.
Which of course brings us to the big question that homeowners, real estate agents, and lawmakers have all been asking. If it's just about flipping paper, is this practice truly legal? Or is it just unlicensed real estate activity in disguise?
This quote from the Illinois Realtors Association gets right to the heart of the ethical problem. It points out that the model can prey on sellers in really vulnerable positions, who may not even realize the person they're dealing with isn't the final buyer or how much profit is being made off of their difficult situation.
And in response, states have started to act. You can see a really clear pattern here. In 2019, Illinois tightened its rules. By 2021, Oklahoma passed its first major act against predatory wholesaling. And if we look ahead to 2025, Oklahoma is adding even more layers of protection for consumers. It's safe to say the Wild West days are coming to an end.
So, what do these new rules actually look like in practice? Let's break down the new, much more regulated framework for the industry.
This table gives us a great side-by-side. In Illinois, if you do more than 1 deal a year, you gotta have a broker's license. In Oklahoma, if you publicly market a property for assignment, you need a license. But look at these new protections in Oklahoma. A wholesaler must disclose in writing that they plan to sell the contract for a profit, and sellers will get a 2-day cooling-off period to cancel the contract. No questions asked. That's a huge shift.
All of this really points to one clear conclusion for the future of the We Buy Houses business. The game hasn't ended, but the rules have fundamentally changed.
The shift is really all about communication. The old way, on the left, could be super misleading. It kind of implies you're the end buyer. The new, compliant approach on the right is totally upfront. It sets clear expectations that you're a middleman, an investor, who connects deals with other investors. It's honest, and now, in many states, it's the law.
And this quote, well, it says it all, doesn't it?
The days of operating in the shadows are over. A business model that relies on a seller's confusion isn't just unethical. It's now a massive legal and financial risk. It's a ticking time bomb.
So ultimately, we're seeing an evolution, a move away from a model that could rely on deception to one that must rely on disclosure. This whole shift from a legal gray area to a regulated business leaves us with one last thought. As rules tighten and information becomes more accessible to everyone, is simple, honest transparency now the single most valuable asset in the entire real estate market?